Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Canine Connection podcast. Today, I am super excited because, and this is kind of funny actually, because I have Annette as a guest and she's one of my training partners. So you would be like, well, dude, you see her all the time. Well, yes, I do. However, I still am dying to pick her brain, and I've been holding off on certain things because I wanted to kind of wait for this episode. And how did this start? Well, I knew Annette was a professor at NYU, and that's about all I knew that she did there for a while. And then one day we're training. This happened a couple times, and something happens with one of the dogs, and I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. All right, I'll tell this one story because I do think this is fascinating. So our friend's
Here
dog
we go.
um mouths the dumbbell really bad, right? And doesn't want to give it up, and the glove, but whatever. And it's got a long history and, tried everything under the sun. So we're like, all right, well, I don't know, we'll ponder it. We don't really have a solution. But oh, by the way, when your dog picks up the dumbbell, it does like this big loopy turn thing before it comes back. And oh, it's not even thinking about front till it lands in front of you. So let's address those two things. How about when you picked up the dumbbell, we're like, come, like, stop parading around, get back here. And hey, front, like, think about fronting. So she's doing that, I don't know, for a few weeks or whatever. And all of a sudden we're standing there and I'm like, I look at Annette and I'm like, he's not mouthing the dumbbell. How come
Mhm.
he's not mouthing the dumbbell? And we're like, I think it's because he's thinking about coming and fronting, and therefore he doesn't have, and so like he's not thinking about chewing or holding on to it.
Mhm.
So like it fixed it like kind of by accident, right? And then and that spouts off uh psychology theory and explains it in such a excellent way. I'm like, oh, that's such a good way to explain that. And so could that happen a couple times, and all of a sudden I come to find out, well, Annette will explain what she actually teaches at NYU. And then I'm like, why are we not using more of what you teach in our dog training? So Annette, do you want to tell everybody what you actually do?
Okay, so sure. I teach in a master's program in organizational psychology. And organizational psychology is basically the psychology of people in the workplace. So it covers a wide variety of behaviors, but the two things I specialize in, and the one that's probably most relevant here, is work motivation. And then I also teach about leadership. So, yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of overlap between motivation of people at work and of dogs and of all of it. So, yeah.
And you train dogs. So tell us about your dog training history as well, because you also teach training classes and you also compete.
Yeah, so it's they actually both things started about the same time because I defended my dissertation. I got my doctorate from Columbia and picked up my very first puppy in the same week. We also closed on a house. It was a
Oh
pretty big
God.
week.
Oh
So that was
boy.
back in 1996. So me being me and kind of always being afraid of the unknown and wanting the illusion of control, I researched everything before we did that. So I knew I wanted a well-behaved pet. So we signed her up even before we had her for pet training classes at Princeton Dog Training Club with Petra. I know you remember Elsie Walker. She was teaching him then.
Mhm.
And I kind of my husband, that's actually when it started, and I kind of watched him for a while and said, I can do better. And I took over.
Excuse me. Push him aside.
I kind of, I was like, well, let me try this. And then, yeah, so then I got into it. Elsie and, they talked me into doing the competition classes with Kathy, and I kind of never looked back. So she was my first dog I ever had. She was a black lab. I'd always wanted a black lab. And she got her UD and 6 UDX legs, and I had to retire her because she wasn't sound. And then when she was 3, we got another dog from the same breeder, and he also got a UD. Probably could have done better if I'd known more about what I was doing. And he was a really nice boy. And when he was 10, we bred him a couple times, kept one of the puppies, and she was my first Dodge dog. Then we bred her, and ended up keeping both of the surviving puppies. That was not the original plan. And they were my next Och dogs. One of them, Cookie, went on to Och 4, UDX 12, and made top 20 at the knock. And they just retired. And now I've got a young dog who I'm really excited about. So,
And you're doing rally
yeah,
now.
I'm doing rally with it with the older girls who are semi-retired, just for something to do with them. They're enjoying it. They're having a blast. Cookie's doing hunt tests with my husband, so I am letting him train dogs again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and a few years ago, Staten Island Dog Training Club reached out to me and asked if I would teach competition classes, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I was like, I've been teaching for years, I've been training for years. Yeah, why not give it a try? And I've been enjoying that quite a bit. And then a year or so ago, I applied to be a judge because Kathy Walker pushed me. And so I'm provisional for novice, hoping to move up to open soon. So yeah, that's my dog life.
Fantastic.
So describe so back to my story about the retrieve and the hold. So when I said that, what did you say?
God, I don't
You
even
n-
remember.
you named the theory, that theory where they can only think about one thing at a time.
Oh yeah, it's not specific a specific theory. It's just the concept that are, and yeah, I assume dogs as well, have what we call limited attentional resources. Our brains can only be processing so much at once. And when he was processing, I have to front, I kind of left not enough room for anything else.
Mhm.
Right. So I thought that was super interesting because that was just a really succinct and clear way to explain what I would have explained in because I would have been like, "Oh, that's so interesting." And I would have gone into this long story because I'm not good at breaking things down like that. And I also think that's a good thing just for us to understand because it works for humans as well as for dogs, right?
Oh,
Like that
100%.
we can only process so much at a time. So I'm working on this a lot with my human students right now because they tend to not be good at mastering steps before they move on to the next steps. And dog training is so complicated that then their brain like explodes and things are a mess. So I feel like they should master a step first, like for example, mark, praise, then cookie, bef- so that it gives them more mental space then to then process other things. Would that kind of be in line with that concept?
Absolutely, because I was actually reading the other day that they estimate that, excuse me, about 95% of our cognitive processing is at the unconscious or subconscious level. And when we
Wow.
form habits, which is what you're kind of talking about, getting so good at like, I mean, I know you don't think really hard about marking and rewarding. It's just natural to you, right? So it becomes a habit, which means it's happening at the unconscious or the subconscious level. And that frees up more of your conscious processing, which is the part that's really limited. So that's kind of what sounds to me like what you're saying you want your students to be able to do.
Correct. Wow. Only 5% available? No wonder we're a mess.
Now, I don't know how true that stat is, but it's widely shared in the field. So somebody's figured that out somehow.
Wow.
So I wonder if that's the same for dogs, right? And so there should be something to be said then that we should make as many things a habit,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Huh. So then, hmm. So then what about where would that fall in then though with um proofing? Well, it would be so proofing makes the habit stronger.
Well, so I was thinking about this the other day. When you're learning things, you learn better if you have to interact with the material in some way. So, like, if you just
Mhm.
read a paragraph over and over, that's not going to stick in your head as well as if you have to then translate it in your own words to explain it to someone else. Because
Mhm.
at that point, you're making deeper connections and you're encoding it at a deeper level. So I was thinking about that in the terms of the dogs and the proofing. And I think if they have to solve the problem by, like, because proofing presents a problem, right? A
Mhm.
conundrum for them. Do I interact with that or do I do my job? And I think if they have to solve the problem, they're interacting with the kind of what it takes to do the job, the kind of the material for them in a deeper way. And it makes it stronger behavior for them, a stronger understanding of it anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's kinda like this book I started to read. Don't ask me the name because I don't remember. I just started reading it. I didn't, but it does say that, like, exactly what you said, that the rote memorization, that's what people always, which would be drilling, right? Having
Yep.
Right.
our dog do it over and over and over and over, and I'm like, "Oh my god, why did you just do 30 reps?" Like, if I have to I say that constantly, right? But that's like instinct. It's like and it says that even professional athletes, like, they'll do that even when presented with the data. It's like this weird instinctual thing that people will go and do that, and that is not the best way to learn the material. So that really, and what's so interesting about that is kind of by accident, like, we've done this, I don't know if you wanna call it an experiment, 'cause and that has a young dog that, um, since she was a baby, we've been she's been training her under, I would say, challenging, would you say challenging conditions?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I just kind of threw her in with the big dogs. So,
yeah, so,
the-
like, whatever we set up for the big dogs, then when it's puppy's turn, she just gets trained. Well, we don't, like, overwhelm her, but she gets exposed right from day one to those hard things. And I started doing that with some of my students' young dogs as well. And it's been, to say astounding, I would say would be an understatement. Like, don't you agree?
I'm amazed by what she can do and what she understands. Like just yesterday when we were doing the go outs to the back of Carl's building, no gates, no stanchions, no nothing. And she just ran straight. And I was like, that would have taken my older dogs years and years to master that. And she just
And it was
understood it.
outside in a section we've never trained her there before. Um, Same with when we did the articles, we set the dogs up in the driveway, the articles were in the grass. The grass was high, couldn't even really see the articles because Est couldn't, he ran out, he's like, "I don't know where I'm going." And she was just like, "Boom," like a rock, like, 0 like, there was just 0 confusion. Like, it was like she'd done it 100 times before. The dog's like, how old is she? 20 months?
18 months.
Jesus Christ. And I think it's because of that learning theory, like, because we trained her that way. I really do, in large part. I mean, sure, there's something to be said for genetics and, obviously, um, you're an experienced trainer at this
Right.
point, but still, um, it's pretty astounding. And I'm seeing it with some of my other students' dogs as well. Um, so definitely something to be said for drilling not being the most efficient thing. Um, People, stop drilling.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
really feel with her that because she's had to do the exercises in so many different contexts and so many different, surroundings, that she really understands what the meat of the exercise is. She doesn't have all that. It's not like I only do this when it looks like this. She's
mhm.
Right.
like,
Right.
I do this no matter what.
Which I think that bodes a problem for a lot of dogs because that's how most people introduce all the exercises to new puppies and green dogs is that they make everything sterile, they make everything easy, and that's the picture that the dog learns that piece in, and then when you start to add the quote unquote proofs, then the picture changes, and that, like, yeah, I think there's something huge to be said about that. Big
Well,
time.
Yeah,
that's the way I did it, and that's the way I said to do it. Oh, no, the dog has to learn it well first. Now I'm like,
Right.
"Oh, for goodness sakes, like, I've been doing this all wrong."
Yeah, and then, like, I'm sure there's been times where she's gotten stuck or confused, right, Annette?
sure.
Like, and then you just help her, right? And
Yeah,
then life goes on.
exactly.
Well, we helped her, but, like, not a lot, right? What we've also done, and I'm having my students it's absolutely fascinating to watch, where the first thing we do is give them a chance to figure it out themselves.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, in that what you described, right? Where the dog is you're giving the dog the opportunity to say, "Let me regurgitate the material, and see if I understand it." Like,
Yes.
versus the second the dog struggles, we didn't run in and help her immediately. We just kinda let her muck it up a little bit and figure it out, right? Wouldn't you
Mhm.
say?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if she got really but she didn't really do that very often, get really stressed about it. She just keeps trying, and you would say, "Yeah, yeah, you're fine," and
Well,
she figures
because
it
we
out.
taught her from the beginning, right, that we you kind of empowered her and we're like, "You can figure this out." And then the dog starts to go, "Oh, I can solve this puzzle
Mhm.
myself." Right? Like, I don't need you. I have this video. It's so fascinating. It's this my student's puppy. It was like, I want to say it could not have been more than 10 or 12 weeks old. She took it to her adult dogs class. So she's outside the ring. The puppy was running to the mat, right? Maybe it was like, I don't know, 10, 15 feet in front of her. So puppy runs to the mat, runs back, starts to run to the mat, gets distracted, wanders away, right? She does nothing, which is very not typical, right? We would intervene and we're like, ah, that the puppy's leaving. Puppy wanders away because it just got distracted. It's a puppy. And then she leaves it be. And then all of a sudden, the puppy goes, snaps his head around and goes, wait, I'm supposed to be going to the mat. Looks at the mat, runs to the mat, sits on the mat. And then the next strap runs straight to the mat perfectly. And that's like very similar to what Annette's dog Leia does, right? Like she gets stuck and then she just, puzzles it out. And then on the next rep, she does it perfect. And I think we're just teaching the dog to also be resilient. Is there something about resilience with like learning theory and motivation and all that?
Um, there is. That's not something I'm super familiar with the literature on. I do know it. There is some stuff in resilience, but I was thinking when you were talking about, it, I was thinking about in terms of this what we call needs theories that talk about what you want out of life that then drives your goals. And the prominent one for people is that we have needs for competence, relatedness, and autonomy. And I think dogs do too. And so by solving problems, it lets them feel a sense of, I can do this. I am competent. I can
Yeah.
do things. And that reduces anxiety and also autonomy. I get to make my own choices about some things. That also reduces anxiety. So I think that kind of feeds into the resilience piece.
I think that's so important what you just said about it reducing anxiety, like super important. Because I think that when we have this tendency to micromanage, guilty,
Mhm.
um, and over reinforce and micromanage, that we create learned helplessness.
Hmm.
And that is not a comfortable feeling for a human or a dog.
And the
So,
original studies on learned helplessness were done with dogs, so we know it definitely happens to them.
oh, really?
Yep.
And so was that where they just reinforced them too much or where they just helped them too much?
Well, they didn't do either. So in learned helplessness, the way they did the studies, they originally put dogs in these cages with and then had a low level electric shock. Now, in some of the cages, they could jump out, and that's what most normal, healthy dogs do. They jump out. This is uncomfortable. I'm leaving. But they also put some of them in cages where they couldn't jump out. And eventually, the dogs just kind of gave up and took it. They just lay there no matter what was going on. And then when they moved them to a cage where they could have jumped out, they didn't try because they'd
Mm.
learned that there's nothing I can do to help myself in this situation. And even if they saw another dog jump out, they still didn't try because they've just given up. They just said, I can't, I have no power. There's nothing I can do. So that's where the original study was. And then it got, they started doing it with people and aversive noises. And then it became part of the whole literature on depression and anxiety. But it started with dogs in cages.
Wow.
Hmm.
And
So interesting.
interestingly, fun fact that has nothing to do with anything, the guy who did all that literature, he spent the rest of his career studying happiness. So there you go.
Well, probably because he was so depressed
Most likely, yeah.
Oh my
from
gosh.
electrocuting dogs and
Oh my
and people.
Because I found that out like, a few years ago that, oh, that's what he did after. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. So anyway, fun
That
fact.
is very funny. So, what about motivation, right? Like, because I think that's really important. Like, for humans, right? So there's extrinsic and intrinsic, right? So
Hmm.
well, you could describe it better than I could. So could you describe extrinsic and intrinsic motivation in humans, and then maybe see if there's anything in there we could apply to dogs?
Sure. And I think there absolutely does apply to dogs. So extrinsic motivation is when you're motivated by something that comes externally to you. So it could be money, it could be praise, it could be anything that's kind of handed to you by someone else or by the environment. Intrinsic motivation comes from um, feelings, internal feelings. So a sense of accomplishment, achievement, enjoyment. Um, that's the reinforcer for you is the internally generated feelings. And, obviously, mostly when we train dogs, we work with extrinsic motivators. We work with toys, we work with food. But I think when you start, like I know, Petra, you do a lot of this with the games and the game becomes fun for the dog. That's kind of changing it into more of an intrinsic motivator. They're doing it because it's fun. So that's intrinsic. So I think dogs absolutely can be intrinsically motivated.
So, do they in human literature, do they feel like w- is one more powerful than the other, or does it m- is it variable?
Well, intrinsic is generally thought to be much better. Because it is a little more powerful, you get a little bit more performance. It also because it can be one of the challenges, and from reinforcement theory, the reinforcer has to be delivered. The timing is important, right? So extrinsically, when someone works really hard on a project and then it takes 3 months for payroll to process their bonus, that kind of really takes away the link between the behavior and the reward. But intrinsically, because you're administering it yourself, it happens almost immediately. So it's very powerful that way as well. Um, and what's one interesting thing, and it comes from that self determination theory that I mentioned earlier, is that if you start giving people extrinsic rewards for something that was otherwise intrinsically motivating, it can take away the intrinsic motivation. It takes away the pleasure. So you have to be kind of careful
Mhm.
in humans anyway of when and how you administer extrinsic rewards. Because
Mm.
what it does, and it doesn't always, but it depends how the person kind of receives it or perceives it. Um, if they start thinking that, if it starts feeling controlling, like, oh, I'm doing this for this and you're controlling my behavior, that takes away the enjoyment. So, because it kind of gives you another reason for why you're doing it. So I don't know how much that applies to dogs, but it's kind of an interesting, interaction between the two types of reinforcers.
So if my dog solves the problem, right?
Hmm.
And feels good about solving the problem, and then we're like, "Wow, good job." Maybe we shouldn't also be giving them a
A
cookie or a
reinforcement,
toy.
right?
Or at least randomly do it so it doesn't feel as connected and as manipulative. Although I don't know how much dogs think that way because we think that way. but they might just feel like, oh, cookie, yay. You know, like I don't know if they read as much into it. But yeah, when I work with my dogs, and I was telling my students this the other day, I try the praise is the big thing. Yeah, you're awesome. That's wonderful. Oh, and here, I'll slip you a cookie. Um, so the focus and it's not necessarily on purpose. It kind of what that does is it builds that the praise is the thing they're really responding to. Now, they like the praise because it's always led to cookies, but eventually they like the praise just because they like the praise. It now has good feelings associated with it. I don't
Yeah,
know if that
that's
made
another
sense.
thing that I found super interesting, and I had asked you about this after I realized what you actually did for a living, what you actually taught. I was like, because you do not give a high rate of reinforcement in comparison to what the average competition trainer gives, I guess I would say, right? So you give on the lower end of reinforcement. And I asked you, are you doing that because for a reason, like based on some theory? And you're kind of like, yeah, no, that's just what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
But now that we were talking about it, though, I do actually feel like it does what, even if that's not why you did it, that the lower rate of reinforcement kind of does track with what we've been talking about, with the dog getting intrinsic reinforcement from solving. So the dogs, we're letting the dog solve the problem, right? We're saying, yep, you're a big boy or girl. I'm not going to micromanage you. I'm going to give you autonomy. Here, you go solve that problem. And the dog solves the problem. We're like, wow, look at you. You solved the problem. Dog's like, yeah, I did, didn't I? And that feels good. And building on that, like consistently. So And then on top of that, giving a lower rate of reinforcement, and your dog's perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think it was a conscious strategy on my part, but remember, 95% is unconscious, so it may have been
Right.
informed by that. It's more for me, I just kind of watch them. If they're super happy and they did the thing and they're happy and I praise them and they're happy with that, I don't feel the need to pile on. I'm like, okay, they're happy, they're motivated. Yay, let's keep. So I guess if I look and they don't look like that was all that fun and it's not that thrilling, I feel like, okay, I need to motivate them more. So I might up the reinforcement a little bit. But
Yes,
as long as
but the
they seem motivated, I don't worry about it too much.
right. Why is your dog motivated with a lower rate of reinforcement? Right? That would be the question.
Hmm.
Are we giving too much reinforcement because we're using the reinforcer as a bribe?
Yeah, it should
Lori, do you
never be
see
as
where
a
I'm
bribe.
going with this? What I'm trying to puzzle out?
Well, I also wonder how much of it goes back to that thing I mentioned where too much extrinsic reinforcement kills intrinsic motivation for
Mhm.
humans. And I wonder if it does that for people too. Because sometimes I watch people and I feel like they're so hooked on the cookie and they turn the cookie into the big focus. The dog doesn't even notice that what it's doing
Yeah.
is fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that definitely can develop for sure.
So it's kind of the
Yes.
same thing in humans as, your boss constantly hammering on, we're paying you to do this, we're paying you to do this. And then you kind of think, well, this must not be any fun. So you don't even find the joy in what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a huge, huge problem, right? Is that I think that, and we talked about this briefly in our reinforcement episode. Just the fact that humans are uncomfortable with struggle, whether they're uncomfortable with humans struggling or not, they're very uncomfortable with the dogs struggling. And when I say struggle, I'm not saying your dog's standing there like stressed to the gills and you're just like, well, figure it out, dude. I'm talking about the dog, you know, struggling a little bit to solve a problem. And then the dog solves the problem, which is no different than, things we struggle with when we're learning new footwork or learning how to train a dog or making mistakes training our dogs or, whatever thing, anything that we learn, there's inherent struggle in learning.
Mhm.
hmm I think part of that comes from people not wanting to feel like they don't have control. And if you're standing there watching your dog, letting your dog puzzle it out, you're ceding control to the dog. And I
Mm.
think that makes some people uncomfortable. They kind of want to manage everything. They want to be the one in
'Cause we're
charge.
control freaks, us dog
Yeah, we
trainers.
all are.
Yeah, why
Absolutely.
are we? Why are humans control freaks?
Well, I don't know if all humans are control freaks, but I think dog trainers absolutely are.
Dog trainers absolutely are, because we
Why
want
are
the
we?
outcome to be the outcome. We
Yeah,
want it
that's
to be a
true.
certain way. And I think
Yeah.
that goes back to, giving all the cookies and then somehow diluting that intrinsic reinforcer, because I think we want, it was so cool when you were like, Annette, when you said, "I sorta just watch them." And I'm like, "They seem pretty happy and motivated just by me telling them that was freaking a great job you just did." So I don't give them a cookie. But I think many of us are like, "But I need to make sure they really and know that I'm happy. So here's 50 cookies." Like, I think that we go to that place so quickly and not put that pause on, just to kind of be like, put that, that genuine, it's got to be genuine. Like, wow, that was so good, buddy. Holy crap. And watching your dog, because I can see it, like, even with the puppy now, like, I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, I did, right? I did do it. And I still, I do that. And then I still, here's your fucking ball, because this is your end all reinforcer. Like, when I should maybe not do that. You know what I mean? Like,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Yeah. Like,
because I need you to know really how proud I am. But I kind of just took away that piece.
mhm.
It's interesting.
I don't know if this is in any way related, but confirmation bias, right? That's
hmm
something Annette and
Mm.
I have talked about in training. And the way it came up is like s- some of us, like I'm keyed in, I have a confirmation bias towards errors, right? Like
hmm
towards things that are wrong. I shouldn't even say wrong. So if it goes all the way back to I'm a physical therapist, my eye has been developed and my hands towards finding the piece that's missing, right? And then how do I put that piece back in there? So if someone's moving incorrectly, um, I need to notice that. Where is that coming from? What piece is missing? How do I put that back in there? Then I do physical therapy on dogs. They can't even tell me. So I really need to have good eyes and hands, right? And I really
Mhm.
need to be able to see the slightest little thing, what's off, and or feel it and see it. Those are my only two options, and fix it, right? So, like, I'm that weirdo that, like, if I see somebody out in the store limping, you're not supposed to look, right? I'm staring because I'm like,
You're
instinctively, I'm like,
diagnosing.
I must solve this problem. And then once I go, oh, it's their hip and da da da, then I can look away. Right? I'm like, oh my God. My friends will be like, stop doing that. I'm like, sorry, I can't help it. Right. And then I teach. So, what is my job? To see everything you're doing wrong and tell you how to do it right. So, when I'm working my dog, the second something is like slightly off, I know it's like, to me, it's like a giant alarm bells are going off in my head, like, brah, brah. So then I watch students and their dog blatantly does something wrong. They completely ignore it. The dog finishes and they're like, wow. And they're reinforcing the dog. And I'm like, holy shit. And then I go, did you just see that your dog looked away, like over there? No, it looked away. And so I look at Annette and I go, oh my God, like, why does this happen? What is the thing that causes this? And you were like, it's confirmation bias, but in the other direction, right? To
Mhm.
where they only see what the dog, they don't want to see what am I saying, Annette? Help me out.
They only saw what the dog did right. They didn't notice. So I distinctly remember when we had this conversation and what we were watching. The dog picked up the glove and the dog brought the glove back. So that was the part that got focused on and got praise. The fact the dog picked up the glove, looked all around and did a big circle on the way back, which you were like, how could you not see that? Um, that didn't even get noticed because it wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for, is my dog retrieving the glove? They weren't looking for all the different pieces of what it should look like.
So should we be telling our students to have the opposite confirmation bias?
Look for all the wrong.
Do you know
well,
what I'm saying? Like,
I think it comes back down to kind of basic goal setting, because goals that are specific are going to drive behavior more. So general goal, like the dog retrieves the glove, yeah, sure, that tells you, did the dog retrieve the glove? But it's kind of, there are a lot of different ways to retrieve a glove. Some of them are going to get you a higher score than others. So if you have a
Right.
specific goal of, my dog goes straight to the glove, picks it up, turns around without looking at anything else, trots or runs back, the more specific you get, the more it helps you look for, like
I
I said,
think I
pieces.
agree. Because I think some people would be like, I'm just fucking happy it got the glove,
Yeah, and a lot of
Then
people are.
yeah,
which is fine, except this person's not.
oh,
Yeah.
And that's why I'm pulling my hair out. And this is not exclusive to this person. This is a very common
mhm,
student scenario.
right.
Well, and
Yeah,
I think part of it in the case, especially if someone and the person you're talking about is not as experienced, they don't even know what to look for. They
yeah.
don't really have a good sense of the criteria of what a good retrieve looks like. And I think that's where you have to start with. These are the pieces you should be looking for.
But there are I think though there are students who should, quote unquote, know the criteria of what their goal
But
is
then
for
you
them.
can do it. Petra doesn't yell at them. Why did you not
Well,
notice
that's the
that?
thing, because I've done that, and they'll do the thing, and the dog executes it, and there's some stuff that didn't go well, or the criteria wasn't met, and they let the dog do the entire thing, and then they reward the dog, and I always say, this is what I say to them: "Did you like that?" And then they look at me, and it's almost like they all of a sudden, at that moment when I ask them, they have to take a second and they go, "No, I didn't." And I say, "Well, then why did you reward it?" And they say, "I don't know." Like, they don't
Well,
know. Like, I think in the moment, they I don't know. Like, that's like,
Yeah, I'd be like,
that is a common
why
thing
did
with
you why did you pay him for that? He totally did this, that, or the other thing. And they're like,
but it's
I don't
almost like
know.
they didn't see it. They didn't see all the stuff I saw, which
Yeah.
is that
in the moment, like, if they were watching somebody else, they'd probably be going, "Oh, that was a ugh." But in their moment of their dog, like, they didn't see it until I had to say, "Did you like that?" And then they were like, no, I really didn't." It's so interesting to me.
so is that
I,
confirmation bias because it's their own dog and they don't want to see it? Or is that like cognitive overload because there's like so much stuff and their brain can't process it all? Or does that go back to goal setting, that like you don't have a clear plan before you even ask the
Yeah,
dog to do the exercise?
right.
I mean, all of that overlaps, of course. I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people, it goes back to not having a clear picture of what you're looking for. Because if you
Mhm.
can say to someone, let's say the glove exercise, you're going to do this, and what you're looking for is, do they look around when they pick up the glove? That'll
Yeah.
focus them usually to the point where they'll be like, okay, I'm looking at that. That's my
Yeah.
criteria that I'm looking at. When they're
Yeah.
trying to look at the whole big picture, they lose the details.
They lose the details, I think, and they lose confidence in the ability to make that decision in the moment. You know what I mean?
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's another great point. So we should be telling our students to focus on like that specific thing, which is the weakness or the piece of the exercise which maybe the dog struggles with. So don't focus on the rest, focus on that one thing
Yep.
Yeah.
or prioritize that in any event.
Right.
What
Yeah.
can you tell us about goal setting? Because I think people are like planning and goal setting. I think people are so weak in that area. Like, um, you know, when any of the three of us train together, it's like we just have this like internal thing where we're like, oh yeah, I got to do this for this dog, this for that dog, whatever. But that is kind of rare. I don't know why, what it is, why we can do. But eh, most people, I feel like their training's very haphazard.
It absolutely is, and I think it goes back to they not having real clarity in what they're looking for and what they want. Because so we know from goal setting theory that for a goal to be motivating and effectively drive behavior, it needs to be, as I said, specific. It should also be challenging, so achievable, but a little bit of a push. So in the industry, they call them stretch goals. But I think this not being specific enough is kind of hard because I'll say to students, "Oh, well, what's your goal for this trial?" And they'll go, "I want to do well." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" I don't know. I want to qualify. And like, well, qualifying could be a 170 up to a 200. That's kind of two very different things. Which are you looking at? What do you? And sometimes when it comes down to it, when I actually get in the nitty gritty with talking to him, it's really they just don't want to make a fool out of themselves. So, and all of those drive completely different behaviors. If you're going for 170, you're going to train very differently than if you're going for 200. If your whole
Mhm.
goal is not to embarrass yourself, that's a whole different set of behaviors. So I think
Mhm.
people really need to kind of think very clearly about exactly what they want. What does it look like? What will it look like when I've achieved that? How will I know? Because that's the piece that's missing a lot of the time.
And it has to be like the goals really shouldn't be extrinsic. Like that's very common, right? And all like competition coaches, et cetera, mental management will tell you the same thing. Like it shouldn't be, I'm going to cue or get a score or a placement because I think we talked about this yesterday or the other day. Like
Yeah, we did, because that
that,
doesn't, it's not completely under your control.
correct. Like it's totally not in our control. So, like, what is in your control? Like, I stayed focused or I stayed connected to my dog or I executed my footwork.
Exactly. It should really be about your handling because you can't even control what your dog's going to do. You can influence it, but you can't control it. They're living beings. So it
Yeah.
should be about, did I bring my A game? Did I do the handling I wanted to do? And if I did that, then I can feel good about it and make notes about what didn't work that I need to fix.
And
But I
then you
don't
need
think
to
people define
adjust
their
your,
goals in terms of their own handling anywhere near as much as they should.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's
Agree.
because people just put too much on the dog and don't take enough responsibility for themselves. Or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
I feel like,
100%.
yeah, I wonder why that is.
I don't know, but
Because
this is
then,
I keep telling people this is a team sport. You're part of the team.
yeah, but why do they feel like, why do they put so much on the dog and so little emphasis on themselves, right? Like, oh yeah, I know my footwork sucks. Well, fix it. Like, don't keep saying, well, my bow turns are wide. How do I get my dog to do a tighter bow turn? How about you fix your footwork and oh, look, your bow turns are fixed.
Yeah.
Like, what is it in human nature? Because is it because then we can blame the dog and then we don't have to look bad?
I'm sure that's part of it. I mean, if we admit that our performance sucks because it's us, then we have to admit we're lousy handlers, and that's kind of cognitively not. That's cognitively more difficult than admitting our dog than believing our dog is at fault. So it's a little bit of cognitive dissonance there.
All right, people, stop with the cognitive dissonance. Take responsibility. And then, yeah, like people need to just like we're like when we come out of a trial, like when I leave a trial, I look at what went well, what didn't, like what do I need to work on, what do I need to do, improve upon,
I need to change.
what do I need to change. I think we need to, like, people, again, they look at that with respect to the dog. They should reanalyze. So we should probably have goals for ourselves and goals for the dog, right?
Yes.
So then you should set goals for yourself, set goals for your dog's performance. Oh, this is another thing people don't do. Is there anything about like the optimal amount of reassessment or assessment, or I don't know what the proper terminology would be, to determine whether or not we're actually making progress on our goals? People like not do the same thing for 3 months and then go, "Oh, well, this hasn't been working the whole time."
I don't know that there's anything on optimal amounts because it depends on the person, the situation, it's so variable. But yeah, it's definitely part of the process. So the process starts, you start with a goal, you exert effort towards that goal. And then at some point, you should be assessing your progress, right? We talk about that in terms of discrepancy. What's the discrepancy between where you are now and where you want to be? And how you feel about that discrepancy determines what you do next. But if you don't do that assessment, if you don't try to measure the discrepancy, you're not going to change anything and you're not going to be able to adapt your strategy if needed. So, yeah, there's not much on like how often you should do it because it's so variable and specific to the situation. But it's definitely an important part of the process for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like I've seen people do that where they're, kind of quote unquote working on something and it's months down the line and it's like nothing's changed. So you should have changed your plan. And then sometimes I'll be like, how long have you been working on this? And they'll be like, their guesstimate is so completely off base. Like 2 weeks. I'm like, how about 3 months? Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So documenting, right? That's probably a big thing, right? I would imagine.
Well, it helped because we're uh, we call it self-regulating in terms of goals, right? And any given time, we're self-regulating on multiple things at once, which means we're not giving our full attention to any one of them. And so, documenting it could help you kind of be able to go back and be more effective about what you're doing, just paying attention to what you're doing. And so when one of the things I always say is when people try and multitask, they don't do anything well. You're better off concentrating one or two things and then finishing those and going back to the rest of it.
And that's the world we live in now. We are doing thousands of things all the time at the same time.
Exactly. And those limited attentional resources are getting divided.
Yeah. I think that plays a big part in it. Big part.
Yeah. I, mm, oh God, sorry. My brain just went shooting off in another direction and I had to rein it in. Don't hold that thought, limit attentional resource, because I want to go somewhere with the dogs with that. But yes, like the discipline that we need to exert, right? To that we can't expect our dogs to be focused and not be focused ourselves. And I think people really start to understand that when I make them, and I say make them because I make them because some people don't want to, and train their dog out in the world. The first thing almost across the board, one of the first things people will always come back and tell me is, wow, that was hard. I had such a hard time staying focused. And I'm like, well, imagine how your dog must feel. And I think that just our ability to stay focused on a task is a skill, right? Like I do thing because I can feel that pull. Like I can feel it just from social media or from YouTube or different things. And like when I hike, for example, I purposefully do not, my phone is on me, God forbid, in case of an emergency. That's it. But it's off. I do not check it. I don't have a watch on my arm. And I watch that like dings because like I don't want to be looking, listening, checking. I And I can feel how it takes me like a half an hour until my brain actually stops going 8,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And
so what it sounds like you're describing is you're trying to get into what we call a flow state, and in a flow state, you're kind of wrapped up in what you're doing, and it's just you're not thinking about anything else, and you're not even thinking that hard about what you're doing. And we talk about that happening when you're kind of your goals and your performance are you're right in sync. You're working at peak performance, and you're focused on what you're doing. You don't
yep.
know. You lose track of time. You lose track of everything. You have no idea what's going on around you, and
Mhm.
that's so it's called a flow state. And we try and figure out how people can better get into that because that's where you get your best performance. And one of the things is to shut off your phone, shut off your social media, shut off everything. Just kind of go out and just focus just on what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, and I think too, what people I I have had that many times in the ring, and I've worked on that. Look, I have a little advantage because of competing in different athletic endeavors and those things. But also, I don't think people are practicing that when they're training, right? So, like when I'm training, I'm focused 100% on my dog and on what I'm doing. Because if I can't do it when I'm training, there is no way in hell I'm going to be able to do it in the ring. And I don't think people do that. Like, I think they're kind of casual and haphazard when they're training. And then when they go in the ring and now they have the added stress and nerves and whatever, there's no way you can achieve it in the ring if you're not achieving it or working on achieving it in training.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
So back to what was the term that I told you to remember?
Attentional
Right.
resources.
Yes. So our dogs have the same thing, right?
Yeah,
So That that would mean that would be basically like the skill they have to develop of being able to focus around distractions, right? Which is why when dog is first starting to work around distractions, like they may be slower or look flatter because they're it's hard because they
because
only
they're
have
thinking too hard. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that's important because and I have absolutely fallen prey to this, misinterpreting that as, "Oh, the dog is sucky, the dog is flat, so let me make them faster. Let me do things to artificially make them faster," which I would imagine would make it even harder for them to concentrate.
Absolutely. And that's the part of the challenge because they can't tell us what's going on. Is the diagnosis, are you lazy? Are you tired? Or are you bored? Or are you just thinking too hard? Like we have to kind of figure that out for in order to know how to address it. And I think like it's kind of funny because last weekend when we were doing that in create Debbie was calling that really weird runoff pattern during the training thing. And you
Mhm.
yelled at me that I was going too slow. That's because I was thinking too hard about both my footwork and where I was supposed to be going. And it did completely slow me down. And I'm like, I understand how my dogs feel now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so we were doing these really long, complicated healing patterns and in training. And so in that and that's doing the pattern. I'm outside the ring and I look over and I'm like, why is she walking so slow? And her dog's looking at her like it was
What are you
hilarious.
doing?
Her face, that's what really made me notice because she's looking at you like what is wrong with you? You don't normally walk like this. Like, why are you walking this slow? It was so funny. Yeah, so that's another good example of like, you know, the dogs go through the same in a lot of ways they experience things very similar to the way we do, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I mean, there's no way to know for sure because,
Right.
but I absolutely think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I why do people not understand that? Like you just said, like, "Oh, yeah," I went, "Oh, right, this is what my dog feels like." And I think that all the time, I'm like, "Oh god, this is what my poor dog feels like,"
Right.
right? Or I try to explain to people, like, for example, this is a big one. They reinforce their dog. The dog's in the middle of eating the cookie, like, it's still going chomp, 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 and they start healing or whatever. And I'm like, "Dude, the dog didn't even finish eating. Like, how can a dog concentrate on their job when it's still eating?" Is there, like, some sort of a, like, transition thing in humans where they have to, like, right? Because, like, if you task switch, doesn't it requires a lot of energy, which is why they say jumping between tasks is not efficient.
Hmm. Yeah, because you have to kind of switch your whole processing from one goal and one behavioral set that in service to that goal to a completely different one. And it's not that you can't do that on a dime. You have to kind of like, okay, I need to put this aside and then I need to start this. And it takes some energy. And I think it does for dogs too. I was still hung up on though, on what you're saying. Why don't people understand that, dogs see things a lot the same way we do? Cause I'm always telling my students, because they don't, I didn't get a chance to listen to your reinforcement podcast yet, but I know my students don't reinforce enough. And I don't just mean they don't give cookies enough, they don't praise enough. And I'm always
Yeah.
on them for that. And I keep saying, if you went to work and your boss never once told you were doing a good job, never gave you any encouragement, and maybe gave you your paycheck at the end of a month, how would you feel about that? Would you enjoy their job? They're like, no, I would hate that. I'm like, well, why are you doing that to your dog? So, and
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, like it doesn't occur to them to think about the dog's point of view in the same, to relate that to how they would feel.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know why it doesn't occur to them, but I
I
have those
know,
conversations with them all the time.
that's why
I
I thought this was so interesting because it's a lot of things you're talking about that you teach to humans, right? Like, it's the same thing for the dogs.
Right.
So why I do find that fascinating as well. Like when people get annoyed when their dog doesn't want to stay there and look at them for the moving stand. I'm like,
Would
how would
you?
you feel if I told you, brought you out in the middle of like the town and said, stand there, don't move, and a complete stranger walked up to you and started touching you? Like, ew.
That's a really interesting visual.
But that is exactly what we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Like, it's disgusting. Like, get off me.
Uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Ugh, it's so uncomfortable.
I
And
don't
then
think
they're like,
people, but that's like the thing. I think people, there's like a lack of people really like trying to figure out how their dog feels in certain moments and situations. Like they just, I don't know, like if it was a person they were doing that with, they would probably be more conscientious of how they felt, right? Like
They
make
might. I don't think enough people put themselves in other people's shoes, to be honest. So,
agreed.
well, that's yeah. There's just like lack of
Empathy.
humanity and empathy.
Yeah.
Human
I think
race.
people just by nature are very
You know what
self-centered,
I
so
mean?
it's harder
Like
for them to do that.
if I brought Petra out in the middle of a crowd, like, and said, "All right, everyone pay attention. We're gonna do this thing." Like, I would be conscientious of Petra's feelings. Moment. Like, I don't want her to be uncomfortable. This is probably uncomfortable for her. So I'm gonna, be like conscientious of that. But people don't do that with their dogs. That's what I'm saying.
I wonder if it's because the dogs can't say, or, well, first of all, they can't read right? Like, maybe they could,
Like my
but you're right. I kind of
right?
agree with that. Like, sometimes people look uncomfortable and other people don't even pick up.
Or they don't care. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe
not
that
sure which it is, if they don't notice or don't care, but
I don't
yeah.
know. I think there's
But
something to be said about that, though, for
but
sure.
for sure with
I
dogs
care about
though,
my dog's feelings. Like, I care about
I
their
care
state of
too. I care
mind.
too much.
So I think that's a thing. Like,
But I also think people aren't good at reading their dogs. I know you guys
yeah,
have
well,
talked about that
oh
before,
god,
and
yeah. Yeah. Agree,
I was
100%.
laughing 'cause one of the first podcasts of you guys that I actually listened to, you were talking about how you just sit and stare at your dogs all day long, like, in fascination, and I'm like, "Doesn't everybody do that?" But apparently not. So,
No,
I think a lot of people just
No.
they can't read their dog at all, and that's
they
part of it.
can't.
So,
I mean,
if you can't read your dog, you can't have any idea what your dog might be feeling.
yeah, or
And s
assess anything at all.
yeah.
Yeah, we've done that, we've gone down that we talk about that all the time. And I said, like, my students, I'm like, "Look at your dog." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Look at your dog." "What?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, really?" Like, your dog's screaming that feeling, like, whatever it is. They don't
But
see
I
it.
also think a big part of that in dog training, I there is a part where they don't read the dog at all, but there is a part where they can't because they have cognitive overload.
Yes, agree.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Like that poor 5% is like about ready to
Yes,
spilling
it's too much, it's overload. It is.
And, now that you're saying that, it just made me wonder if people are if you think people are better about it when they're by themselves versus, like, in front of the instructor, in front of a judge, in front of their classmates.
I
Yeah.
don't know because I mean, so because I teach online, they r-
Yeah, you
they
most that's why I'm
record it.
curious because you mostly see them by themselves.
Yeah, and no, they pretty much
Although, if you're recording something, you know that somebody's gonna watch it, so it does have the same effect as if there's an actual person there.
yes, but they're not immediately interacting with that person. So I'm not talking to them.
But
They're
it doesn't
not
matter. So there's a whole
oh.
finding called social facilitation, and what that refers to is if you're doing something that's really easy for you and there's someone else around, even if they're not really watching you, your performance goes up. And the kind of mirror of that is social impairment, that if it's something challenging for you, your performance goes down. Now, they started it with just like an audience. Then they had someone sitting, they did all these variations. There was one with someone sitting blindfolded and headphones with your back to you. You still get the effect. You get the effect if there's a camera. You get the effect if there's a mirror. Like you can socially facilitate yourself, which is
Mm,
fascinating. So
that's
I'm wondering
fun.
how much of that plays into it because we only ever see people when they're kind of aware that someone's watching them, and I think it gets much worse when they go to a show and there's a judge who you know is evaluating you. So, I don't know,
Yeah.
it just kind of popped in my head when you were talking.
So then how do you overcome that though? Well, I mean, because you have to at some point, because first and foremost, you're going to go in the ring. You're not only are you going to be judged, there's spectators. I mean, that's always a huge thing, right? The whole social pressure.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
and
awful.
everybody thinks that always kills me. Everyone's watching. No, no, they're really not.
I
They're
know.
They're too
not.
worried about
You're not that
themselves. They are
important.
not watching you.
I say
It's
that all the time, but they're so convinced they are. And I'm like, and even if they are, they really don't care. They only care about themselves. I'm like,
And I'll say, when you're at a show, are you watching the people in the ring? Well, no. I'm like, well, what makes you think that they're watching you? You know, why are you so special? But yeah. But
but
to go back to
yeah.
your what do you do about it? I think the answer is you have to turn the task from something that's hard for you into something that's easy for you. So it
Mhm.
has to be so ingrained and so habitual and so something you're super confident in. And
yeah,
then you'll get the performance enhancement of having an audience as opposed to the impairment effect.
yeah.
Well, and that probably speaks to that a lot of people are going in the ring way before they, never mind the dog, are really ready, right?
Hmm.
And so then that's going to make the whole thing worse because then that's going to increase the impairment because they're not fully prepared and confident and
Yep, and then their
neither is their
performance
dog.
won't be anywhere near as good as it is when they train alone or even, just in class. And then that's discouraging. And then the anxiety starts to rise and it just kind of cycles to where people get really frustrated.
Oh my God, humans, why are humans so complicated? We make our own lives so hard.
That
And
we
then
do.
And then we choose to go and compete and, like, make it worse because it magnifies everything, right? Like, it magnifies all your insecurities, all your self-doubt, all your Oh my god, we're so crazy. These poor
But when it goes well,
animals.
it feels so good.
Right.
It does. But these poor animals, like, that they have to put up with all this craziness.
I do think that frequently. I look at my dogs, I'm like, you guys put up with so much nonsense from us. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and they're like they're fine with it, you
Yeah.
know? They're just like, "Okay, I still love you. You mucked that up completely, but it's okay." Unless you're Zaina, then she tells you off. She's like,
Well, the
"You're an
Zane is
idiot."
special.
Same as different.
Ugh. Alright, this was really good. There's so much to unpack here and so much to think about.
So good. So good.
This was fun. I wasn't sure going in because I'm like, okay, but no, it was actually really fun.
I
So thank you
told you
for having
it
me.
wasn't gonna be bad. All we do is we just BS
Yeah.
about dogs, and I'm always trying to think, right, like, how as a dog trainer and as a human teacher, right? Like, obviously, like, Lori has said this many times, like, we want and you're the same, we want our students to do well, right?
Hmm.
Other like, we care. So how can I explain it better? And how can I explain things better to my dog, right? And how can I explain things better to my students? And how can I be a better trainer? So, um, and learning theory and psychology and all that, like it plays a big role. And I think if we have a better understanding, like, when you said that to me that day about the confirmation bias, I literally have mentioned that exact thing to my students, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing that." So, like, that's super helpful, right? Like, for them to recognize that that's what they're doing and that that's hindering them. And then once they have that awareness, they can change it. Um, And I'm always looking at the learning theory and like, how can I apply it to my dog training and how can I be a better dog trainer? And I think the more people understand, the better it helps them personally and it helps their dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dream.
As long as,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me
Thank you,
force you to
Annette.
come on.
It was
Aw.
it was fun. I was happy to do it now that it's done.
Yeah. Thank you, Annette. That was awesome. Loved it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy training. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.